Hi, and welcome to Tranquil Talks with Chris. I'm Chris, your host, and this is your space to slow down and catch your breath from the noise and chaos of work, and where you'll feel supported to take one intentional step forward in how you communicate and lead. Today, we are at the final pillar of the plant framework, the T, transformation through feedback and feed forward. I wanted to first take a moment to acknowledge our time together this week. We have covered a lot of ground together in this series. We've covered presence, listening, alignment, trust, and now with T of plant, we arrive at the place where all of it comes together and where lasting change actually happens. I want to ask you something honest. When you think about giving feedback within your team, in your org, how does it feel? For most leaders I work with, the immediate and honest answer is some combination of obligation, dread, and avoidance. It's very, very rare that a leader immediately comes to me and says, "Hey, I'm actually excited about giving feedback and having those kinds of conversations." They feel like the exception to the rule, that's for sure. And for the people receiving feedback, they tend to feel and have been feeling some combination of anxiety, defensiveness, the sense of being evaluated, but that's not meant in a positive connotation, rather than feeling supported. We've made feedback harder than it needs to be. And I keep seeing it time and again that feedback gets treated as this must do, check it off a checklist. It's sort of what I call an event. It's meant to be this sort of one-time only sporadic thing that gets done, rather than it being treated as a communication practice, something that stays fluid and regular. There's a constancy to it, a normalcy about it. Feedback feels so darn hard because we make it about the past rather than the future. And by delivering it in ways that are activating people's defenses rather than their curiosity. And now that my business focuses solely on hybrid orgs, I am seeing time and again how difficult or how amplified it feels here as well, specifically in hybrid, where feedback appreciatively is happening more often than not in writing. Tone can be hard to interpret or gets misinterpreted. Messages are sitting and stewing before anyone's responding. So again, to me, I would say hybrid kind of pushes it up a level in terms of how much harder it's been feeling. And I'm here today for this episode to tell you that there is a different way, one that is more forward-focused, more human, and more likely to actually help change things for the better and on a lasting basis. By no means am I the first person to come up with the word feed forward, but I certainly am one of the advocates in this space using her platform to work to open minds and hearts and greater awareness that there really is a different way. We don't have to keep struggling in these same patterns that we have been within our employee life cycles. I still remember when I first fell in love, or not really even first fell in love, but I really wanted to start sinking my teeth into the concept of feed forward. It remains pretty vivid in my mind. And this was a few years back. I was in a coaching session with a senior leader, with an executive, and he was someone who was so skilled in his area of expertise, a deeply caring individual and leader. There was sort of no separation between who he was as a person, that is who he was as a leader, highly emotionally intelligent, compassionate, and he was completely stuck in a pattern with one of his direct reports. They had had the same feedback conversation 3 times. Each time, his direct report understood the feedback and they agreed with it. And the kicker, nothing changed. So in our coaching partnership, he and I explored what had been happening in those conversations, and it became immediately clear that every single one of those convos had been very backward facing. It was very much, here's what happened, here's what went wrong, and here's what you need to do differently. The message this executive was looking to deliver and did deliver was accurate. It wasn't ambiguous. It wasn't false. It was bang on to what it needed to be. Knowing him as I did, the delivery each time was extremely respectful and emotionally intelligent. All good there. Nonetheless, it was giving the person something to defend against rather than something to move toward. So within our sessions together, we ideated, we brainstormed, we thought through and experimented, role-played some different things, and landed on trying just the wording itself, the verbiage used to be different. So instead of him looking to say, here's what you need to stop doing, we helped him shift towards saying something like, here's what I'd love to see more of, and here's how I can support you in getting there. And I'm happy to share that by him taking that shift from ultimately, something backwards to something forward facing, conversations that followed were completely different. The message hadn't changed, but the orientation had. No longer backward, now forward. No longer an evaluation per se, it was possibility. And that is feed forward. And that is so profoundly powerful. Today, in this episode, to help guide you through how transformation through feedback and forward actually works in practice or can work in practice, I'm going to take you through three things ultimately. And if you've been following or if you've been listening to my other episodes this week, you're like, yep, Chris is in her teaching component for sure. And she gives us 3 practices, 3 dimensions. Not only that, I'm going to supplement each one with 2 tips that you can use right away. And then not only that, before we wrap up, I'm going to give you one more experiment you can try. So I'm just kind of giggling at myself. I stay very, very structured in this series. It's been helpful for me and I hope helpful for you ultimately. Okay, let's get focused on what does transformation actually mean in practice through feedback and feed forward. All right, the first thing is the shift itself from the language of and the mindset, quite frankly, from feedback to feed forward. As I've been referencing, traditional feedback is quite retrospective. It looks at what already has happened and evaluates it. Feed forward, on the other hand, is prospective. It looks at what's possible and supports movement toward it. And as an aside or as a supplement, I wanted to stop at this point and let you know that what I'm speaking about, while specific to feedback and feed forward, this mindset shift, this frame or this choice to frame it differently, that's a very coach approach. And coaching, gotta tell you, is the new leadership currency. So punchline I'm trying to make here, or the point I'm trying to make as well, is to drive home the importance of framing, reframing, taking up more of a coaching approach and mindset. So that's likely a whole other limited series, but I want to sort of plant the seed for that now. So getting back on track to feedback, shifting from that to feed forward, when I talk about this, when I talk about being future focused, I'm not at all saying, and it certainly does not mean, that you never address what went wrong. Of course, that remains important. We're not going to gloss over that. But what it means is that you are now looking to frame it not as judgment, which typically that's how they tend to come across, whether we mean it or not. Framing it in terms of growth instead. Again, that possibility, what may come from this. What did we learn? It's putting it more in a positive, growth-oriented frame. So, it's not about saying things like, you missed 3 deadlines this quarter, but, what might you need to feel more confident about timelines going forward? Things like that, right? It's simple shifts, not groundbreaking shifts, but simple shifts and framing differences. Because at the end of the day, the information, the messaging is still the same. You want to make sure you're exploring what needs to be looked at, but that direction of information is now different. And for the person receiving it, moving towards something positive, towards how can I get better going forward, that's enormous. Couple of tips, suggestions I have for you here to support you. The first really is that reframe practice, the feed forward reframe practice. Think of one piece of feedback that you have been meaning to say to someone, but haven't quite found the right words or the right moment to go ahead and do that. Take that one piece of feedback. Now rewrite it using this following simple structure. Here it is. I'd love to see more of X, and here's what I think would help you get there. I'll repeat that. Very simple structure. I'd love to see more of X, and here's what I think would help you get there. Notice how that framing feels different, both for you as the person delivering it and for the person you're imagining receiving it. By no means are you, again, as I said earlier, you're not glossing over it, you're not erasing what happened. You're redirecting the energy toward what's possible. You're shifting from evaluation to possibility, and that is the heart of Feed Forward. Something else that I'd love to offer you today to think about, to try, is to build Feed Forward into your existing cadences. This is not meant to be onerous. This is not a huge rollout. You're not needing a new process or a new meeting to introduce Feed Forward. The beauty of this suggestion is you are being invited to simply shift the orientation of the conversations you're already having or that are scheduled already on your calendar for the near future onward. So in your next one-on-one, try this. Try ending that one-on-one with this question. What's one thing I could do differently in how I support you that would make the biggest difference for you over the next month? I'll repeat that. And of course, by all means, you can take this question and make it your own. Change it however you need, certainly. So in your next one-on-one, try ending with this question. What's one thing I could do differently in how I support you that would help make the biggest difference for you over the next month? And then not only that, take it one step further. Answer that same kind of question about yourself and share it to that person you're in the one-on-one with. Share with them one thing you're working on developing in your own leadership. I know there will be some of you, maybe even many of you, that as you hear that, you're like, ooh, that may fall out of your comfort zone. And I get that, but stay with me. Hear me out. That reciprocal, forward-focused exchange between the two of you in just one-on-one, that can begin to create a beautifully powerful culture shift. Because what it's doing is modeling exactly the kind of dialogue that you want to see ripple through your whole organization. So that's food for thought, right? Take it as you need, take it if you want to. And if you do, I would love to know how it goes. All right, so we looked at the first dimension of transformation. And again, that was just the shift itself from utilizing feedback as the language to feed forward. The second practice, the second element of this is creating the conditions for honest dialogue. Feed forward only works inside of psychological safety. People need to feel genuinely safe to ask for help. They need to feel safe to admit they're struggling, to have willingness to hear honest input and perspective from others without fear that doing any of that is going to be used against them. This is a leadership responsibility, and it's built, these creation of conditions, it's built through consistency over time. Again, if you've been listening to all episodes in this series, you will have heard me say consistency time and time and time again. And that was with intentional design, to have consistency constantly said. Leaders who do this consistently, leaders who become more mindful of responding to these admissions of struggle by their team, the asks for help, etc. When leaders respond to that with curiosity rather than judgment, for leaders who model vulnerability by naming their own developmental areas, leaders who work to separate identity, the characterizations of a person from their behavior, what they're doing, what they're saying, as part of communication, these leaders are exactly creating the conditions where real transformation not only becomes possible, I'm here to tell you it's guaranteed. So to offer you a couple of things here, how do you go about creating the conditions for that honest dialogue? The first one I've got for you is what I call the psychological safety practice, or signal. And that's not a word I pulled from AI, although yes, that is a word that I'm noticing AI uses a hell of a lot, but I do talk in those terms, the psychological safety signal. At your next opportunity, when you have time, next week, whatever is good for you to try this, look for one opportunity to respond to someone coming forward. Respond with curiosity rather than going into problem solving or even defensive mode, depending on the context of what's coming forward. So when someone brings you a concern, disagreement, what have you, before you respond, pause, kind of self-regulate depending on what the reaction that you feel bubbling up. And just as importantly, acknowledge the courage it took for them to say it. And it could be something as simple as saying to them, I'm really glad you told me that. Thank you. That can't have been easy to raise. And I want to make sure I understand it fully before I respond. That response, and again, you don't have to take my words exactly as they are. You make them your own. But the response that you anchor in care and compassion, acknowledgement, curiosity, that does so much for your psychological safety within that relationship. And just as others do it, it ripples through the whole organization because it's sending a message that truth-telling isn't simply tolerated, it is fully embraced and welcomed. And once that kind of message, that becomes a pattern that's established and repeated consistently, people will absolutely guaranteed start bringing you things earlier when they're still solvable, rather than much later on when they've already become a crisis or when they are handing you their letter of resignation and that takes you by surprise. And then as a second suggestion for you, some food for thought for you, I made a brief reference to it, so I'm going to spend a little bit more time now. I referenced separating identity from behavior. And my ask is that you look to do it in every feedback conversation. And again, what I mean here, and it may sound self-explanatory in case it's not feeling like that, one of the most common reasons that feedback activates a level of defensiveness rather than curiosity is that all too often, and I see and hear this all the time, it's getting heard as a statement about who someone is rather than what they did. You may be listening thinking that doesn't apply to me. I'm forever holding it to the behavior. And so if that's the case, great, keep on keeping on. But if you've been even unintentionally fixating more so on it's reflective of who they are. For example, you're not a good communicator. I've heard people say that to their teams. That's going to land completely differently than saying something like the way that message was framed observed that it created confusion for our team. So what I'm just asking you here with this suggestion about separating identity from behavior is to take an audit of the language that you use. Reflect back, think back to what you say during feedback conversations. And are you describing behaviors, the specific, observable, changeable things that people did or said? Or are you intentionally or unintentionally describing more identity, more of them, their characterizations of who they are? So it's really just either a reminder to keep making it based on behavior versus identity, or to lovingly encourage you to start rethinking about that. Because once you notice that distinction and you live that distinction, that is such a shift that you can make in creating those conditions for honest dialogue, for honest psychological safety. All right. The third and final dimension or practice for this pillar is making feedback, quite frankly, a regular thing, making it a cadence. Not this one-off, just the annual review is when you're giving feedback. So obviously shy away is what I'm trying to say. Please shy away from it being very sporadic and feeling more rare in the exception. Make it a regular thing. The reason annual reviews tend to feel so heavy is because they're carrying 12 months of unspoken observations all at once. I know there are many leaders that do have regular conversations. I think these leaders are incredible. Keep doing you. That's awesome. I also know there are leaders out there that are so busy and drowning in work and are very much working managers, not true leaders. And they, as much as they want to give regular feedback, the reality is they ain't giving regular feedback. So again, reviews are the first time they're sharing 12 months worth of observations. That has been a lot on the leader's mind, accumulating in their mind, and it's certainly living in your team members' nervous systems for months, right? That's not something we want to continue to do. And I know there's more to it in org design and workforce decisions and workforce plan. I know it's bigger than just performance management, I realize. But for today's purposes, I just want to get us thinking about encouraging the regularity of feedback. So when it does become regular, when it does become more of a forward-focused practice, okay, that became a tongue twister. When you weave it into all your one-on-ones, project debriefs, ultimately into the everyday of how your team operates, it's no longer going to have that dreaded feeling that we all feel when it comes to having these kinds of conversations. It just will become how you and your team communicate. It'll be normal, expected, it will be safe. And that sense of normalization, that's where transformation is hanging out. Not on those big annual must-do conversations. It's in the small, regular, consistent, courageous ones. To leave you with a couple of suggested tips or practical things you can do. Number one, I offer you what I call the 2-minute feed-forward check-in. At your next one-on-one, and I would encourage you to look at doing this for every one-on-one you now have, whether they're scheduled or spontaneous. Add 2 minutes for a simple forward-focused exchange within them. And you're going to ask 2 questions. That's it. At the end, of every one-on-one. Sorry. You're going to ask other questions in the one-on-one, but at the end of each one-on-one, just ask these 2 simple questions. Number 1, what's one thing going well that you want to keep building on? I'll repeat that. What's one thing going well that you want to keep building on? And the second question is, and what's one thing coming up that you would like support with? And what's one thing coming up that you would like support with? That's it. That's it. 2 questions, 2 minutes. When you begin to do this consistently across every one-on-one, this becomes a practice that I promise you will start reducing the anxiety of the annual review with very steady, regular exchanges that you have throughout the year. And dare I say, people will begin to embrace them, you as the leader and your people, because they are going to become normal, expected, safe. Are they always going to go well? Probably not. Very likely not, right? There will be things people have to improve on. There still may be things that people aren't willing to own up to. So, hey, it's not all going to go tickety-boo. I realize. I promise I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid, but they will be normalized. They will be expected, and there will be the creation or the nurturing of more safety. And that, just like transformation is lasting behavior change ultimately. Again, that normalization does so much for securing lasting positive change. Last tip I've got for you here is to create not only focus, so we're not only going to focus on one-on-ones, those are important, but secondly, I invite you to create a team feed-forward ritual. Something very simple, 10 minutes once a month. Here's what you do. For that once a month, build 10 minutes into one of your existing team meetings for a very simple feed-forward practice for the whole team. Go around your team, in person and virtual, and invite each person to share 2 things. One thing they are proud of from the past month, and one thing they're focusing on developing in the month ahead. Okay, so gonna go around the room, virtual and or in person, no matter, or depending on your composition of team. You're not looking to evaluate, you're not providing commentary, you're just bearing witness and acknowledgement as you go around the team and invite each person to share one thing they're proud of from the past month and one thing they're focusing on developing in the month ahead. Just as a supplementary kind of side note here, again, you know your team better than me, so who am I to tell you what to do? I ask that you kindly continue to stay mindful of and sensitive to the people on your team and how they best like to process and contribute in meetings. So you may or may not have people who are naturally introverted on your team. And I know every introvert, and I'm an introvert too, we're all different. Yes, we're all unique. One typical commonality is that our preference is to take more time to process, to think about things. So we need a bit more time. And we appreciate written communication. So, we might prefer to leverage the chat versus speaking it. So that's all I ask, that you just allow people to share, or if they choose not to share, that's okay. That's their right when it comes to this exercise. I don't want it to be forced. I don't want people to feel on the spot. That will undermine your good intention. So this team feed forward practice or ritual, it does 3 things simultaneously. It normalizes development as an ongoing shared process rather than being a very private or performance-related one. It builds genuine mutual accountability because people start supporting each other's development goals. They know what they are, right? It's awesome. And thirdly, it creates this, I call it the natural DNA of the team. It creates this natural DNA of courageous, radical honesty that becomes just part of how your team operates every single day. That's culture change right there. And again, it starts literally with 10 minutes once a month. How cool is that? All right, so we went through the three practices of this pillar of the T for plant, couple of tips each. And as I said, as always, I designed each episode to wind down with one experiment, or one more, I guess, experiment that you can take away with. I want to keep giving lots of practical things to try and think about. And as always, in case you haven't noticed them, or if this is your first episode listening in, please know that as I've done with the whole series, each episode has a link to a PDF of my practice guide per that pillar. And because today is the last episode for this series, I'm going to relink or link again to the overall plant framework. So if you've been listening and absorbing it all, great. If you're like, wow, this is a lot of information, you of course can go back time and again to listen. You also will have a written resource of all of the 3 dimensions for each pillar, the 2 tips per dimension. You have all of that. It's all good. I got your back. Okay, let's get to the last experiment that I want to leave you with as it pertains to the T of plant. And all it is a simple reframe. I'm going to kind of pull from one of the tips I have already provided today. Think of one piece of feedback that you've been holding on to. So again, it's that piece of feedback you've been meaning to say, but you haven't yet. Maybe you're not sure how it's going to land, or the timing hasn't felt right, or you've said this before to the person and it hasn't changed a damn thing. Whatever that is, take that one piece of feedback and now rewrite it as feed forward. It's that reframe. And as you think about rewriting it, start with what's possible, not with what happened. Instead of saying, here's what I've noticed, try saying, here's what I'd love to see more of. Again, a shift. It might feel like semantics, but what you're doing is you are helping to move conversations forward. Instead of pointing to the past, point to the future. So all of the elements of what feed forward is, focus on what's possible, point towards the future, speak in with intention, choose words that are definitely supportive based. If after you've rewritten it as feed forward, if you're ready to deliver it, go for it. All the best. You've got this. Would love to hear how it goes. If you've rewritten it and you're still not feeling quite ready to deliver it, no worries. With anything I've shared, you can take it or not take it. Do it when you need to. It's all good. If you don't deliver it just yet, I kindly ask or invite you to notice how that reframe changes the energy of the message for you, how it's changing it for you, and how you think it'll help make the person who's going to receive it feel as well. Because it's that shift in energy. It's the noticing of the patterns. It's commitment to consistency. Everything that we've talked about, it's shifting from feedback to feed forward. What's possible? That, my friends, that is where transformation begins. And I know that you got this. Thank you so much. We are at the end of this series. I want to thank you all so much, truly, for this episode and for all of the episodes in this plant framework series. Over 6 episodes, we walked through initially the whole framework at a glance, and then we went through all 5 pillars in more detail. Presence and awareness, listening for what's not said, alignment through communication, nurturing trust, and today, rounding it out, bringing it all home, transformation through feedback and feed forward. Together, these pillars form a complete communication operating system for you and your hybrid organization. This becomes a living system, a living process of collaborating and connecting and performing that will just keep getting stronger and stronger over time as you and your organization together learn to design communication with intention rather than assuming or just leaving it to chance. If this entire series, any element of this series has sparked something within you, if you have found yourself listening in and thinking, we need more of this in our organization, we want and need to nurture more of these components, I would genuinely love to connect. As a gentle reminder and as a friendly reminder, within every episode, the practice guide, which will sit within today as well for the T, and the framework again overall will be reattached to this episode. Within those documents, there is my direct email address. Please feel free to reach out, or even, hey, if you have a question, something's come up for you, please reach out. I genuinely would welcome to have a connection with you. And this is not the end of our time together here in what I call the learning lounge. Yes, it's Tranquil Talks with Chris. I toggle between really seeing it as a learning lounge as well. Something comfortable, something safe, something where you go at your pace, not someone else's. This is just the beginning. There are more learnings and insights and case studies to share. Until we connect next time on this podcast, I wish you continued good well-being, take good care of yourself, and please know that here at Tranquil Talks with Chris, you are always welcome here, and you belong. Cheers.